Welcome to OmniFocus Workflows with Lee Garrett, and I know there's many of you who are joining here live and many more who will be watching a recording of this, so you're very welcome either way. And if you're new to Learn OmniFocus, welcome to this site and community. This is something that I founded in 2014 after doing OmniFocus coaching and consulting for several years. And it's really grown into a sizable international community. There's people who've joined from over 60 countries. And part of it is really learning to use the OmniFocus app effectively. Another key piece is learning best practices that aren't necessarily specific to OmniFocus, but it can be useful to see how are these things actually practice using OmniFocus. What does it actually look like to put these into action? And then another big part is creating a community around all of this. And there's a certain amount that can be learned from watching videos and reading books and so forth. But there's another level of richness, I think, that happens when we engage as a community and when we have the opportunity for dialogue and so forth. So that's very much part of the design of Learn OmniFocus. And in terms of what I call Learn OmniFocus Live, the live component, there's three main areas that are covered there, and one of them you're participating in right now. This is the theme sessions. So these either cover a specific topic, and I'll be talking about the next topic that we'll be delving into in just a moment. And sometimes they'll have a workflow guest, and today I'm really happy to have Lee Garrett sharing his workflow. There's also office hours, and if you haven't participated in one of these yet, I definitely recommend checking them out. And these are 1 hour sessions. There's a maximum of 10 people in the group, and it's not recorded. You're asked to keep everything confidential. Everybody's on video and can optionally share their OmniFocus setup if they like. And it's a great opportunity to get feedback on your setup, on your workflows, get some ideas from myself and other people in the group. And I just absolutely love leading these. And if you haven't had a chance to participate in one, there'll be a couple more coming up this month. And I plan to keep offering these on an ongoing basis. And if you do want some private coaching and consulting, this is something I've been doing for many years. And I continue to work with people all over the world and many different cultures and professions. So there's a web link I'll share in a moment to get more information on how that works. So first of all, the next session that I'll be offering here on Learn OmniFocus is on mastering reviews. And I did a survey earlier this year just asking people what topics were particularly relevant. And this one was up at the top of the list. And I think this is one of the big challenges, not just with OmniFocus, but anyone practicing GTD or any other productivity methodology, is just how to keep things up to date and relevant. And I think reviews can very easily slip to the background and be deprioritized. So I'll be talking about some strategies for doing reviews, getting into how important it is, the many benefits of doing reviews, and I'm sure Lee will be touching on this topic today as well. It'll be really great to have his feedback on this. So that live session will be on Wednesday, January 10th, and that's the same time as this one, from 11 to 12 Pacific time. And the OmniFocus Learn OmniFocus office hour sessions for this month, there'll be two. There'll be one on November 22nd, that's from 12 to 1 Pacific time, and another on November 29th, that's from 4 to 5 Pacific time. And hopefully this will accommodate anybody who's joining in from various parts of the planet. But if you're finding you would like to come and there's just not a date and time that works for you, definitely drop me a line and I'll see what I can do to accommodate. So if you want to learn more about what's coming up, you can go to learnomnifocus.com/live. And if you're not already a member, you can go to learnomnifocus.com/join. And one of the benefits of joining is you'll get access to all of the live sessions. So you'll be able to join live, as well as getting access to the full content library. If you are interested in private coaching and consulting, you can go to learnomnifocus.com/private. All right. Well, without further ado, that brings me to our guest today, which is Lee Garrett. And Lee will be joining us from the southeast of England, specifically in a town called Margate, which is, I looked it up this morning, it's, I think, a 29-hour walk from London, probably a little faster if you drive. So he has the honor of being our first English guest on the show, and I've talked with Lee and certainly read a lot of his blog, and he has some really interesting things to share, not just on the workflows, but even on the way that he names things. And I really like some of his conventions. I'm finding I'm starting to use some of the same terminology that he uses. He's a productivity ninja over at Think Productive. So does work with organizations there and the rest of the team. It's a UK-based organization that was founded, I believe, in 2009. And I'm sure he'll be talking a little bit more about this as we go through. He also has a very active blog called MyProductiveMac.com. And OmniFocus is a major theme on here, and he certainly covers a lot of other productivity apps. And I know many people in the community are using some of these as well. And I know the one that came up before we started the session today was DEVONthink. So Lee's going to talk about that in relation to OmniFocus as we go through today. All right. Well, without further ado, I'll hand it over to you, Lee.
Okay. Thank you very much, Tim. You've said some really nice things. It's always great to hear nice things from people, but when it comes from people that you actively respect as well at the same time and have a lot of time for, it tends to mean more. I've been a long time fan of Learn OmniFocus. I've been obviously aware of your work for a long time. I think the first time I heard you was on a Mac Power Users podcast about 3 years ago. And the story that sort of inspired me was when you talked about how you discovered productivity because of the illness that you had. And it was something about the journey that you went on that sort of helped inspire me to want to follow that sort of path myself. So if you want to have a definition, a graphical representation of imposter syndrome, just take a snapshot of the screen now with my face on it and being on Learn OmniFocus. It's absolutely mad. Having people like, Karosh is here as well to be able to see what I'm going to be talking about. David Sparks has been on here, Joe Bulig. It's just absolutely mad. So thank you very much for asking me on. It's great being able to help. So who am I? I'm, as Tim has said, my name is Lee Garrett. I'm a productivity nut. I'm an Apple nut. I'm nuts about both of those, but probably more so about productivity now than I am about Apple. That's no fault on Apple's part. It's just Brexit means I can't really afford very many of the products nowadays here in the UK, unfortunately. But I can afford to be passionate about productivity. It's something that's really, really important to me. I do rely though on my kit. So I've got a 15-inch MacBook Pro, which is my primary machine. I've got an iPad Pro. I was a bit of a sort of like a golem when it came to ordering that. I ordered it about 18 months ago because I thought, wow, it's an iPad Pro and it's got a pencil and it's got to be fantastic. I'm going to have it. But does it form an actual part of my workflow? Probably not, if I'm perfectly honest. It's just a really, really nice bit of kit to have. So it's there. But it's not something that I use actively day to day. My phone is an 8 Plus. I deliberately went for the 8 Plus as opposed to the 10. I couldn't really justify the cost of the 10, I think. So I deliberately went down the 8 Plus route to sort of block that road. But I do use my Apple Watch. I've got a Series 2 Apple Watch as opposed to the 3. I don't really need to have the data connection there on the watch. So I've got, the kit that I need to have to be able to write about it responsibly. And I do all of that writing, as Tim has said, at MyProductiveMac. It's very much a labour of love. There's certainly not any kind of profitable income that really comes from it. I've got a lot of plans for 2018 to be able to sort of extend a lot of the coverage that I have, but by and large, I'll do 3 posts a week. 2 of those posts are workflows about how I use certain applications that mean a lot to me, and then I will do 1 post. Usually comes out on a Friday, which is like a why I love a particular application. It's not a review. I'm very strict on the fact that my posts aren't reviews of certain applications. There are far bigger and better sites that are able to do that. If I use an application like Fantastic Owl, for example, I can't really compare that to the other 6 or 7 calendar apps that are out there. I just want to write about apps that I use, that I'm passionate about and that I love, and just tell you why it is that I love them and why they form part of my workflow. Now, as Tim has said, I'm got a very dirty accent. I come from the UK. It's incredibly cold here at the moment. November has definitely hit. I'm in a lovely area. I live in Margate, which is right on the beach. If I turn right out of my house, within about a 90-second walk, I'm on a really, really nice lush green. There's about 5 miles of beaches that span the area. It's great for sort of walking and exercise and just sort of decompressing, meditation. It's a fantastic area for that in the summer, but by days it's cold at the moment, and we certainly have long winters here. But it's a lovely area. I'd never move. I'm incredibly grateful to be in a place like this, and it is only about 90 minutes from London on the train. So when I commute for my day contracts, I am actually an IT project manager. That is my main source of income. As David Sparks would say, I left working for the man about 3 years ago, so I'm a completely self-employed contractor. I started at the very bottom in IT. I started working as like a junior technician in a school, changing mice and toners and keyboards, etc. But got my head down, studied, got as many certifications as I could, and became an IT manager, an IT director. Eventually I moved across into design work, so I became a solutions architect, designing sort of complex computer networks, both passive and active networks for schools, for higher education authorities and for businesses throughout the UK. But there was always, it didn't matter how well I worked and how successful I was, there was always a project manager above me that would get the plaudits for pretty much all of the work that I did. And also got paid more. So I thought, I really fancy having a bit of that. So I decided to study my Prince 2 project management certification, and I became a project manager, which is now where the bulk of my income comes in from. I work as a freelance project manager delivering IT projects such as Office 365 migrations, digital transformation projects, developing web presences for companies that do not currently have a web presence. That's where the majority of my income comes from. Project management is great. It's good fun. It's sad to say that I would say if there are any PMs that are watching this, you'll fully understand what it is that I'm saying, in that most jobs and careers you have, you're measured by your level of success. With project management, it's more how well you fail in a project because you have sort of 3 things that you're trying to achieve. You've got to get a project in at cost, you've got to get it in on time, and it's got to be the quality that has been defined at the beginning of the project. 9 times out of 10, unfortunately, one of those slips, and that's generally what you get measured on. So project management is incredibly difficult, but if you have the right approach and the right levels of productivity, you can be a success, which is why I'm very happy to say that the second role that I have as a freelancer is working as a productivity ninja for Think Productive. Now, Think Productive Tim was absolutely right, it was founded in 2009 by Graham Allcott, who wrote the best-selling book, How to Be a Productivity Ninja. And we deliver 5 different workshops that are based on sort of like the teachings, as it were, of that book. So we teach how to get your inbox to zero, how to be a productivity ninja, email etiquette, how to make meetings magic, how to stress less, achieve more. And we deliver those workshops throughout the UK, and we've actually got a global presence now. So we have a Think Productive unit in Canada, we have them in Europe, we have them in Australia. So we have ninjas everywhere. My job title is a productivity ninja. It's an actual job title that someone's given me that I've got on a business card that I can take around. Now, if that's not living the dream, I don't know what is. Without further ado, I think it's time to have a look at my OmniFocus setup. Before I start, I've got a couple of provisos that I need to get across. OmniFocus is a fantastic application. Okay, it does an awful lot of good stuff, but it on its own is not going to fix your productivity issues. Okay, it's a crutch. It's a tool that you're going to use in order to be able to help with your productivity. You need to concentrate more on the psychology that sort of underpins productivity. I suppose a good analogy would be if you get a Fitbit or some sort of exercise wearable for Christmas, you don't open it up and say, excellent, that's it, I'm fit and healthy because I've got a Fitbit. That's not the way that it works. What you need to do is you need to instill some good habits. You need to instill a fitness regime and use your Fitbit in order to be able to help you get there. It's exactly the same with OmniFocus. If you don't know how to define your work, if you don't know what your priorities are, if you don't know how to schedule your time, then you're not going to be able, OmniFocus is basically just a glorified list that doesn't mean anything. The second point I want to get across is productivity is entirely personal, and the use of OmniFocus is going to be different for every single person that uses the application. Now, I've been through, and I've suffered with this myself, I've made so many mistakes with my OmniFocus setup, whereby I've gone through the Learn OmniFocus sort of course. I've looked at the live sessions that, for example, Karosh did, and I watched it, I made loads of notes, and it was like, right, that's a setup for me. And I started using that, and then I watched Sven Fechner's setup, and it was like, oh, wow, that's brilliant. His setup is absolutely amazing. I'm just going to copy what he's done now. And lo and behold, it doesn't work. So what works for one person isn't going to work for everybody. So some people will look at some of the stuff that I've got here and go, yeah, that's really good. And some of you will look at it and go, what on earth is that nut job from the UK doing? It, that just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's entirely up to you how you work it, but just make sure that it suits you. Don't feel that you have to copy everything that everybody does. The third point is I'm now focusing on simplicity. Okay, simplicity is one of my 3 main words for 2017. OmniFocus, I was starting to fall out of love with it a little bit in the beginning of the year. I thought there was an issue with the application. It wasn't an issue with the application. The issue that I had was the fact I was trying to do too much with it. I was overloading OmniFocus with all of this stuff that it was impossible to process. So over the course of the last few months, what I've done is I've actually stripped OmniFocus down to its bare bones, and I've slowly started to build it piece by piece into a system that I think works for me. And that is pretty much a system that I'm going to be demonstrating to you today. And the last point, and this one's probably quite a weird one, what you're seeing here is my live database. We are on my live machine with my live database. I've just had to take out just one key folder for a client who I've signed an NDA with, so I can't show anything to do with that particular client that's there, but everything that you see here is live. So let's see what we've got. So first of all, you'll see the theme. Okay, I'm very much a dark mode sort of person. The reason why I like the dark mode is because there is a very clear differentiation between actions that are live, so you can see that they're nice and bright here, and actions that are sort of either on hold or deferred. I need to have that sort of visual representation in my mind. I do use an application called OmniFocus Colors. I have written a post about it on MyProductiveMac. And what OmniFocus Colors does is it allows you to export a theme. So you could export the dark theme here into a file. Use OmniFocus Colors to be able to tweak some of, like the sidebar colors or some of the text colors or something like that. So what we'll see here is if I just make a note here in this particular task, and I just type in some keys there, you'll see that actually I've got a nice bright white font because it's far easier for me to be able to read that than it is with the default font color. I think the default font color in the dark is quite a dark sort of color, which I have difficulty seeing. So I've used OmniFocus Colors just to change the color here. And there's a couple of other little color changes that I've made, which are quite inconsequential. You probably won't see them there, but for my I'm over 40 now, so with my eyes, I need to have everything as bright as I can. We've got 2 folders here, boss mode and worker mode. And this is probably, I dare say this is going to be the biggest change for a lot of people that are looking at this, because this isn't something I think that's been repeated in many other workshops. So the difference between boss mode and worker mode. It comes from the phrase knowledge work. Now, knowledge work is a phrase that was coined by the management theorist Peter Drucker. And what knowledge work is it's the brain's ability to add value to information. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, everybody here on this live session is a knowledge worker. That means that your work isn't defined for you. At some point, you're going to need to either define what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, how you're going to do it. One of those is going to need to be done. It's tricky because when you're a knowledge worker and you have to define what work you need to do, you can be sitting there trying to write a report, or you can be, some sort of piece of work. It could be writing a blog post, writing a story, anything at all. And you're trying your best to concentrate on what you're doing. But you've got a boss mode part of your head that's saying, are you sure that's what you should be doing right now? Don't forget you've got this party at the weekend you've got to go and pick up a suit for, or have you picked up your kids' birthday presents, or did you leave the gas on, or you're going to have this meeting tomorrow, have you prepared everything for it? You're trying to work and you're trying to do the best that you can, but you've got this infernal sort of mental chatter that's stopping you from doing what you feel you need to do. And what's happening there is the boss mode part of your brain is colliding with the worker mode part of your brain. The two need to be completely separate. And that is probably the backbone to the workshops that we do at Think Productive, is teaching you how to keep the boss mode part of your brain quiet whilst you're in worker mode, and vice versa. So what I've done is any projects, any checklists, any templates, anything at all that is not related to any specific work to do with my goals that I need to do, I've put in a boss mode folder, and I have perspectives that are set up which just completely separate my boss mode thinking. And I'll have about 3 times a day where I will schedule my boss mode work. Let's run through them. So I've got a folder here called Reviews and Rituals, okay? And firstly here we can see that I've got a morning ritual. So how's this set up? Well, this particular project is on hold, okay, because it's in muscle memory now. I know what this particular ritual is, but during my weekly review, I want to make sure that I review my ritual and just make sure that everything's working. So that's why I keep this list here in OmniFocus. I'll just quickly run through what the ritual is. I drink a pint of water first thing in the morning because it helps just get my brain sort of, active and running. Take my vitamins, and then I'll try and get outside when the temperature is okay and try and either go for a cycle or go for a run. Then it's meditating when I get back in, some inside exercise, which is just like some upper sort of body work. And then what I'll do is I'll sit down, I'll review OmniFocus for today's most important tasks, and then review my calendar. And all of that generally takes around an hour. So as far as I'm concerned, that is something that is preparing me for the day. So that is some boss mode work that's going on there. It's not actually directly related to a goal that I need to achieve. It's boss mode work. And the same goes really for the evening. I've got an evening ritual, which I carry out, obviously, every night. I process my OmniFocus inbox. I also process my DEVONthink inbox. Now, DEVONthink, for those of you that don't know, although judging by the chat box, lots of you do know, DEVONthink is essentially like a second brain tool. It's what some people would call an Evernote replacement, in that you can throw anything into DEVONthink and it's going to stick. So DEVONthink is my paperless office. DEVONthink is my goal list. DEVONthink is my note-taking application. Everything that I need to source, anything I need to research, everything just goes into DEVONthink. So at the end of the day, I could have 20, 25 files maybe sitting in DEVONthink that I need to process and put into groups or folders, etc. And that happens every night. Processing my reading list is something I think I picked up from Tim actually, and that is my reading list is, I don't use Pocket, I don't use Instapaper as a read it later service. I actually use the reading list in Safari. The reason why I use that is because it's very easy with a touch of a button to be able to take an article from the reading list and put it straight into DEVONthink for later research. It's a one-touch macro that can just send it across. It's really handy. I will then review my calendar for the week, and then I will put a pint of water in the fridge. The reason I put the pint of water in the fridge is within 2 minutes of drinking that pint of water first thing in the morning, I'm wide awake and I'm ready for anything. I can do anything. I don't need caffeine in the morning. So then we move down to the daily sessions of work. Now, this is where the primary boss mode work actually takes place. So 3 times a day, I schedule on my calendar boss mode work. It's usually around 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. I'll then have an optional one at 2 o'clock, and then nearly always at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And what do I do with this? Well, essentially what I do is, this is when I'm going to process my email, and I will not go into my email at any other times of the day. We know that email can be an absolutely brilliant communication tool for information that you need to have, but it can also be a horrible time suck. So I'm very, very intentional about the times when I go into email. And you'll see that the keyword there is process. It's not check, it's not do. The word is process. I will go through my inbox from top to bottom, and I will clear it out, assign the tasks that I need to assign, archive the emails that I need to archive, delete the ones I need to delete, and then I'm away for the day. And the way that this particular project is set up, you'll see that I've got 10 a.m. there in brackets, although the task itself becomes active at about 9:30, just in case I want to start the boss mode work a little bit early. And then all I'll do is I will tick it off, and it will come back the next day. So I'll tick that off there, and you can see that the colour's changed. It's now deferred to tomorrow, and it's going to come back on tomorrow. It's a rinse and repeat really for the 2 o'clock and the 4 o'clock. And then we have an application called Unclutter. Now, I don't know if anybody here is familiar with this application. It's what I call a little gem. It's about $10, I think it is, on the App Store, or £10. But what it basically is remember I was talking about the way that when you're in work mode, you will have interruptions and your brain will continually think of things that are going on. Well, what Unclutter is it's a little note-taking application that you just pull down from the top of the screen. And then what I will do is I will just make my notes on the interruption. So it could be a phone call that I've taken, it could be a message that I need to reply to, etc. And then I'll just lift it up and I'll make a point. Every time I go into boss mode, I will just clear out this section here, okay? The beauty of Unclutter is that if I go into preferences here, I go into notes, I can actually write those notes directly to Dropbox. So if for whatever reason I have to leave my MacBook and disappear off to a client meeting or something like that, and I've got my phone, I can still process my Unclutter notes from my phone and then assign them OmniFocus tasks, etc. if needed. So I'm not actually tied to my MacBook for that. Just as a point of reference, Unclutter isn't just a note-taking application. If I go into preferences here and go into panels, it's also a clipboard manager and a file dropping tool as well. So you can see that I've now got 3 different panes here. I've got a note-taking one in the middle. I can drop files in here in the left-hand side for use later on, and I've got a clipboard history section there. I don't use those for those though, however, because I've got different applications that I use for those functions, so I just delete those off. Okay, Slack. I will process all of my Slack messages, usually every couple of hours where possible. Now at Think Productive, we've got a very vibrant Slack community. As ninjas, we're talking to each other all the time, sharing tips and talking about workshop experiences and it's a really busy time. But we're also obviously cognizant of the fact that our attention is really, really valuable. So we're very intentional about when we go in and we check those Slack messages. I will also process my OmniFocus inbox and then review my calendar for upcoming events. This is all of my boss mode thinking, and I perform these boss mode sessions, as I say, about 3 times a day. The last one is my weekly review. Now, it's quite interesting that Tim is doing an upcoming live session on the review, because my weekly review, I'm thinking of changing, to be perfectly honest. I had loads of reviews set up. I had a quarterly review, daily review, annual review, monthly review. I had every single review under the sun set up because I thought that is what I'm supposed to have. What would happen is I would receive an alert saying your monthly review's coming up, and my reaction would be, oh. So as soon as I know I've got that, there's something wrong, I've got to address that somehow. So what I'm thinking of doing is I'm thinking of taking the word weekly out of my review here, still carrying it out weekly, but just turning it into a single action list, and then taking 2 or 3 of the tasks that may have been on my monthly review that I need to complete and adding them here with a defer date of a month if it's a monthly task, etc. So my weekly review, while still going to be carried out weekly, it may have some quarterly, some monthly or whatever elements in there as well, which will sort of like take the heat out of doing a full-on monthly review, which for whatever reason my brain just can't get over doing that. It doesn't suit me. So those are that's all of my boss mode thinking that sits in there. I've then got an ideas park. The ideas park is analogous to the Sunday Maybe list, which you will find with in Getting Things Done, but I think Productive we call it an ideas park. And if we look down here, you can see those asterisks, they represent my areas of focus or areas of responsibility. So Solium.biz is my business name. Solium, for those that ask, and I do have a few, SO is Sophie, that's my eldest daughter. LI is Lilia, my middle daughter, and AM is Amelia, my youngest daughter. So no matter how bad things get at work, I know what my why is because it's the name of the business, so it just helps keep me going. I've got an ideas park, obviously, for Think Productive, MyProductiveMac, so on and so on. And basically anything that I think I'm going to want to do with those particular areas of focus, they go into that ideas park. So any ideas, anything at all that may happen at some point in the future, those are my Sunday Maybe lists. I've also got some personal stuff, which is more, for me. So if there's books I want to buy, books I want to read, I do have running lists here, very much like Joe Bulig does. He uses OmniFocus as a tool for all of those sort of things. And it does actually work for me to have that as well. If we move down to checklists, again, this is something that I've actually ripped from Joe, checklists and templates. So yeah, you have to identify what the difference is between a checklist and a template. So a checklist is something that's going to happen once. So for example, I have a checklist here for closing a presentation at Think Productive. The reason that I've put that in is because about a month ago, I did a presentation or a workshop, and I left my Apple MagSafe connector at the site, and that cost me £70. And I decided that I wasn't going to do that again, so I built a checklist up within OmniFocus to be able to make sure that I do all of the stuff that I need to do, and I don't have to spend stupid amounts of money because I'm totally disorganized. The way that the checklists work is I've got a template here. You'll see that it's set to complete when I complete the last action. It's on hold, so it's a held project with a held context, and it's set to defer again for a minute. So what will happen is I can add these checklist items as I wish, and then as soon as I've ticked off the last item, the checklist project will then close, and then it will reopen as a brand new template. I know that Tim uses this as well in his setup. I don't have very many here at the moment because, as I say, I'm just rebuilding my OmniFocus setup from scratch. But as something happens that I know I'm going to need to do more than once, I will create a checklist there to make sure that it doesn't get forgotten. Now, templates are a little bit more complicated. Basically, a checklist happens, as I say, once at any time, but you can have multiple templates that are going on at once. So, for example, I've got one here which is called NPM Workflow. So this is a template that I will use when I want to create a workflow project or a workflow blog post on MyProductiveMac. If we look here, you'll see that there's a placeholder. So we've got those two arrows there, blog name and the arrows on the other side. And if we look down here at the note, you'll see that I've got that placeholder repeated. And then every single step that I need to run through in order to be able to create. So this is, my live database. Every single time that I create a blog post, I've got to research it, write it, put it through Mark II, which is an application that tests the grammar, etc. for the post. I need to upload it, source an image, etc., etc., etc. I downloaded a script from, let me find the site, it's kurtclifton.net. Here's the URL for that particular script. And what I'll do is, let's say, for example, I want to do a workflow on ScreenFlow 7. What I would do is I would run this particular script, type ScreenFlow 7 in here, click OK. And you can see down here on the left-hand side, what we now have is all of those placeholders have been filled in with that text that I've typed. And that saves a phenomenal amount of time when it comes to some of the projects that I've got going on, because I've got an awful lot going on at the moment. And then all I need to do is just move that into the worker mode folder that it belongs in, and I'm off to the races. So that's all of my boss mode work sitting in there. Okay. We then move down to worker mode. So worker mode is where we move into the do's, and I've narrowed my worker mode responsibilities down into 8 areas of focus. So I've got, although you can only see 7 here, actually, yeah, I've replaced my Think Productive one with one that's just called fictitious stuff at the moment. So Solium.biz is my business. I've got MyProductiveMac. I've got brain gain. Now, brain gain is a phrase that I use for personal development. Okay, anything that I need to do in order to be able to learn about something. It could be an app. It could be a process. It could be any kind of a soft skill. It could be project management. It could be sales, because I Think Productive, I've got to sell workshops to people. All of these things that I need to do in order to develop, they go into brain gain. Lee Garrett is what I call my house, so that's where we live. Then Hubster, which is any husband project I've got going on. Dadster, because I am a father. And then, probably most importantly of all, me, myself and I've got to look after myself and make sure that I'm running at optimal efficiency, because if I'm not, then all of these here are going to suffer. Now, each one of these, let's just close that one there. Each one of these areas of responsibility has got 2 folders contained within them. One of those is called goals, and one of those is called groove. And each one of these, I say, is exactly the same. I'm quite OCD with regards to my clean lines and how I have everything set up. I like everything being just so. Maybe it's the British part of my nature. I don't know. So what I will have is, in the goals folder, I'll just have between 3 and 5 active projects. Okay, so I don't have like reams and reams of projects of stuff that I want to do that I may get around to doing. I don't have projects in there that take 6 to 12 months to carry out. As far as I'm concerned, that's bloat, and that's one of the problems that I had with my OmniFocus setup at the beginning. All I want to have here is stuff that I can physically do, and it is related to the goals that I have got set. I used to have goals set up in OmniFocus. I now use a different application. I use Day One to actually track all of the goals that I currently have, and I update that. I've actually got a separate goals journal within Day One that I use to track what I want to get achieved over the course of the next quarter. And I usually use quarterly goals. I don't use weekly goals or monthly goals. Everything's set on a quarterly basis. As soon as a project is completed, then what I will do is I will go to my ideas park in my weekly review, and then I will just move projects across and activate them as I need for area of responsibility. That way, I never have too much on my plate. I've always got a manageable workload, and it's very easy to course correct myself because I'm updating these active projects on a weekly basis. If I go into MyProductiveMac, you'll see that these are the posts that I'm currently working on at the moment. Sometimes I will overload the MyProductiveMac one, because sometimes it's good to sort of like have an idea as to the posts that I want to do over the course of the next month. So I may have as many as sort of 8 to 10 sort of posts in there. I've had quite a good week this week. It's been fairly quiet with my project management side, so I've been able to get quite a lot of work done. So I've only got 3 left sitting in there. And it's pretty much a repeat for all of these down here. I don't need to go into too much detail as to exactly what projects I've got going on. But I do need to talk about Groove. Okay, now the Groove folder contains sort of like, it's the maintenance tasks and the worker mode actions that aren't tied to a specific active project, but they still need to be done in order to keep the wheels sort of turning. So I suppose you could liken it to like a maintenance folder or an admin folder. But there's something about the words admin and maintenance that put my teeth on edge. They're just, I just can't deal with them. They just bore me. They're just not good words for me. I like to have words that are slightly more dynamic. And Groove is a good word because I tend to find that Groove is all about motion. It's all about, perpetual movement, etc. So what I have is every single Groove folder here has a single action list. And the naming is always in a set of square brackets. I've picked that up from somebody. I think it's Tim, actually. I think this is one of your ones. So I have a single action list for every area of responsibility. And if there are any projects that aren't tied to a goal, but I need to complete in order to be able to, I don't know what the phrase is, just like I say, keep the wheels turning. Like for example here, this is my business banking. I need to carry out my business banking, but it's not tied to an active goal up here. So what I do is I just have a separate single action list that I will work through any given time. I do just want to raise this focus action actually that I've got up here. This is something that I got from Karosh in the Creating Flow with OmniFocus book. Now you'll see that this particular task is flagged, and it doesn't really relate to anything as such because there's lots of tasks down here that need to be completed. The reason this task exists is I think he calls it a meta task. Because I've flagged this particular task, it's going to show up in my dashboard, and we'll get to the dashboard perspective in a bit. But it won't show all of these other tasks in my dashboard that need to be completed. Let me show you what I mean. So if I go to my dashboard over here, you'll see that I've got a task here called Focus Action Process Business Banking. If I double tap on that task, and I'll show you how double tapping works for that, it's an absolutely amazing trick. If I double tap on that task, what it'll do is it'll open the project up and it will show me all of the tasks that I can complete. I can then tick these off as I wish, tick off my focus action, and I've completed all of those tasks. So yes, I need to get my business banking done once a week. Yes, all of those tasks need to be completed as part of that, but I don't want to see 10 tasks on my dashboard. I just want to see the one. So that's why those focus actions are so handy. And I have quite a few of them there. I have them for, in fact, if I go to my dashboard, you can see I've got 2 here, home banking and social media maintenance. Let's pop back over here. So that pretty much covers my my folders and my workflow. So you'll see that there's not actually that many contexts there, and this is entirely deliberate. And it's heresy to lots of people, but I don't actually use context that much anymore. It's a really strange way of working, and I fully understand that. But I think about 3 months ago, I had what must have been between 30 and 35 different contexts listed out, and it was getting to the point where I put a task into OmniFocus, and I just would not know which context to assign to it. And at that point, I was starting to get resistance. I was starting to not want to put stuff in there because it was starting to get to be an effort. I didn't know what I was going to need to have. So, for example, let's say I need to record a YouTube video, and it's just drafting a little piece to go into ScreenFlow. What context do I need? Well, I need to be at home because it's nice sort of acoustics here. I can't really record a video in a co-working space. So I need to be at home. I need to have my laptop. I need to use ScreenFlow. Let's talk about energy level context. I need to have a high level of energy. Well, there's 4 different contexts there that I could potentially use. And I didn't know which one to go for. So I pared all of my context down and I just decided to go with the equipment that I need to be able to have and the location that I need to be in. Okay. I tried energy level context. I watched Sven's video. I read Sven's post, a fresh take on context, I believe it was. Everything the man says is absolutely spot on. It should work. Energy level context should be for everybody, you would think. And I just could not get to grips with it. As soon as I put a task into OmniFocus, my first thought was, right, what do I need to have to do it? Not how am I going to feel? So it could be something that works for me at some point in the future, but I've tried and it just doesn't work. So the context I have a boss mode context. I do have errands. This is a context that I use quite a lot. Tesco is a sort of supermarket chain that we have over here in the UK, and this is a context that is set up for geofencing. So as soon as I reach that particular location, then those tasks will flash up and it will remind me on my iOS device that I need to be able to do those. I do have a tech context. I have all of my tech devices listed down here. Sven is absolutely right when he says that technically you can do almost any task on any device. So it's very difficult to assign a tech context. But the way that I think about this stuff is which device is going to actually suit me the best, which one am I going to be best suited. And 9 times out of 10, unfortunately, it is the laptop. So I do have an awful lot of tasks assigned here. Let me just get rid of that and just change them to available. I do have a lot of tasks here that are assigned to the laptop, but there are some here for iPhone, iPad. None for the watch at the moment, as I think that's a context that may need to be retired soon. There's not very much that I do on there. I do have an agendas context. I do have a waiting for context. The use of those is very similar to how other people use them. I don't really think I need to go into those too much. I'm starting to play about with a head context. It's an idea for, if I don't need to have a bit of tech to do something, I don't need to be in a certain location to do something, but I need to have some thinking time, then I've got this one that I'm just starting to play about with at the moment. But by and large, I don't really use context that much, and the main reason for that is I use custom perspectives, and I use custom perspectives an awful lot. For those of you that are familiar with Mike Vardy, a productivityist, he uses a method of working called theming. Okay, now the way that works essentially is Monday could be his theme for admin. Wednesday could be his theme for, audio-visual work. Friday could be a writing day, for example. So the work that he does over any given day is basically dictated by the theme. And it's really good. It's really, it's a really good way of working because it eliminates some of that decision fatigue because you know what the theme of your day is going to be. So it sort of dictates the work that you're going to do. Now, as an entrepreneur, that's absolutely fine. It's a great way of working because you're defining your own work in that way. But when you work with like a blue chip company or somewhere like, especially as a project manager, when you've got to be really, really flexible with the stuff that you're doing, daily theming doesn't work. So the way that I work is I use something called horizontal theming. Now, horizontal theming is where I will take different portions of the day. So it could be a 2-hour block in the afternoon, a 2-hour block in the morning, whatever it is. And I will have a mode of work that I work on. It could be, this is going to be my recording mode. This is going to be my writing mode. I'm going to be in brain gain mode. I'm going to be in hubster mode, whatever mode it is. And all I will do is I will work on a perspective that is based on that particular mode of work. And to a degree, that sort of eliminates money for context as well. Because I've only got a few active projects, I've only got like about 3 active projects per sort of mode that I'm in. I don't need to swap between different levels of context. I just need to use these custom perspectives. So I'm just going to very quickly run through the perspectives that we have here. Thanks again to Tim for the tip here for creating a line, a separator. You know, this helps my OCD for looking at stuff so well. In the top section here, we've got all of the standard perspectives, and I would actually add that. Let's just move over here. Dashboard is very nearly a standard perspective. It surprised me actually in the next release of OmniFocus if this isn't a built-in one, because nearly everybody I know uses some form of dashboard or today view or hot list or something along those lines. And all the dashboard view is it's a list of due or flagged items that are currently available. So what I will do is at the end of the evening, I will just define my most important tasks for the next day, flag them, make them due if it's something that has to happen, and then they will appear on my dashboard view as part of my morning ritual to be able to go through and make sure they're all scheduled. If I come down here, you can see that I've got a boss mode daily session of work. Now this boss mode daily session, all this is it is a focused view of that daily sessions folder that I've got in my boss mode folder. It just shows me that essentially. So it's 3 times a day I'll go in and I will use that. As part of my weekly review, I've got a boss mode stalled perspective. Now, what I use the boss mode stalled perspective for is basically to filter out any projects that I've got in my worker mode folder that have no next actions assigned to them. So let's just show you how that is and see if there's any at the moment. We can see that I've currently got 3 projects which are stalled, and I'm incredibly confused as to why this top one actually is stalled, because I finished that this morning. There we are. I didn't set it to complete when completing the last action. So I'll tick that and mark that as completed. So that one's gone. So there we go. Live action there. The boss mode gathering dust folder, perspective, sorry. What this does, let me just bring up the list again. This will order all of my projects or all of my actions based on the date that they were added. So if there is anything that has been in play for, I don't know, 6 months to a year, and I still haven't actioned it, I need to question whether or not it actually should be part of my workflow. Let's just bring that up here. This is how that looks. Just minimize all of these. There we are. So you can see that it will split all of the tasks up into when they were added. So some of these I could probably do with getting rid of, like that one there. I know that one's gone. We then have 6 very, very easy, I'm not going to go through these. These are basically worker mode perspectives. When I want to work on any business activity at all, I've got a business perspective which basically points to all of the goals folders within my worker mode business folders. I then have more specialist ones. So if I just want to work on MyProductiveMac work, I've got a perspective here. If I just want to work on Think Productive work, I have a perspective there. And then one for brain gain, one for home, and one for me, myself, and I. Now the perspectives, I'm just going to very quickly cover these ones down here, because this covers a problem that I used to have. And the problem I used to have was how I wrote my tasks. I tended to have this tendency to, let me just bring up my projects here. Let me bring up, here you go. Here's a live project that I'm actually working on at the moment. It is a DEVONthink video guide. This is a list of all of the actions I am currently taking on this video guide that I'm working on. And you'll see that I am incredibly particular with how I write my tasks. Every single task has got a verb that starts at the beginning, and it will tell me exactly what it is that I need to do. The reason why I've set up these custom perspectives for prepare, write, research, record, edit, etc. is I tend to need to work based on, especially when it comes to recording these videos, I need to make sure that I'm in the right mode for the work that I'm doing. So if we look at record, let's just bring these up here. Record will look through worker mode for any task that starts with the word record with a colon and a space afterwards. So it gives me a kind of like it's almost like a Kanban style sort of way of working up here. You can see that this is my prepare perspective here. Once I finish, let's say for example, I finish preparing the environment for video number 6. It will move across here into the right perspective, so I can now write the script and the notes. Once I've completed it there, I'll move across into my recording perspective. And now I will have a list of all of the videos that I'm actually in a position to be able to record. That makes it far easier for batching all of the work that I've got to do. So we say that I don't use context very much. This is actually, it's almost like an alternative to context to a degree, because I'm able to batch work based on the actual perspective that I'm in. That pretty much covers a lot of the, the majority of my workflow that I've got. I've also got, just quickly at the end, 2 perspectives here for the groove tasks. Okay, these worker mode tasks here, they're based on just the goals on the projects, the active projects that are based on the goals that I want to achieve. Those maintenance /admin /groove tasks, they've got their own separate perspective down here.
There's one question, somebody else who is an IT project manager interested in how you deal with tasks that have to be done within 3 days. So before your next review period. He says he still falls into the trap of assigning a due date and feeling guilty and counter GTD for doing so. So
all I would do on that particular aspect is, if we go into reviews and rituals and this daily sessions part here, this is what I would tend to, and as an IT project manager, I'm sure you fully understand this. This is almost like my list of control tasks, as it were. So control tasks is a good phrase to use here. If I need to add anything in here, which means which will be about reviewing a particular sort of high impact project or something that I know I need to review more often than a week. I need to be able to, check on this one particular project's progress, on a daily basis, hourly basis. If you need to be sort of like that tactile with the project itself, I will just put a task in here in the daily sessions boss mode work saying, right, review progress on project X, project Y, whatever it is. And I will just add that into my daily sessions here. This daily sessions project here is going to build up. I know that I need to put in process answer phone messages. I know that's going to need to go in there soon as my next project ramps up. So, but then there will also be times when I can take stuff away from here. So this really does act as my sort of like my control list.
Quite a few comments on context and in particular use of energy level context. And I realize those just don't work too well for some people. I really like what you shared about in terms of the mode that you're in. Like, are you writing, are you recording, things like that. I think for a lot of people that might be a lot more relevant. And as you said earlier, you're essentially using those like process colon and so forth as context. They just happen to be inserted within the name of the action instead of using the actual context fields.
Yeah, the reason I did that was I tended to find that that's why that context list built up too much. It didn't work for me. Whereas moving between mode of perspectives it's just a more natural fit for the way that my antiquated brain works.
Yeah, sure. Do you tend to put a context on everything, or is that reserved for certain types of actions?
I do put a context on everything. It's just at the moment everything seems to be either laptop or house or maybe an errand. It's just the way that it is. But that will change as the system matures.
Yeah, definitely. And once we have support for multiple tags in OmniFocus 3, I think that'll. But at the same time, I think I'll continue to do things personally about like process colon and phone colon and things like that, because it always did feel a bit redundant to have a task that's like phone colon Lee and then put a context of phone on it. There's essentially duplicate information in there. So, yeah, some comments around context representing people. I'm not sure if you mentioned that, but do you have context for specific people?
I used to, but the thing is, as a contracting IT project manager, the people that I work with changes on like a quarterly basis, a 6 monthly basis. I don't generally work with the same people, over a prolonged period of time. So I would just find myself deleting context, creating context, etc. If I go into my agendas perspective here, and what I will do is I will just search. If I'm in the middle of a big project and I've got lots of stuff that I need to track on here, all I will do is I will just do a search for the particular person. It will just come up with the actual task that I'm actually waiting on, or I need to communicate with them about.
One suggestion there is to put a prefix, just like you would with email colon or process colon or something like that. Use the same approach for agendas, so it could be the prefix could be the person's name. And visually that looks kind of nice because they kind of line up as you're looking at them, or if you're sorting them in alphabetical order, that can...
Yeah, I've got something like that when it comes to emailing people. So what I will do is, and this just gets me into let's do a new task here. So if I type in a text expander snippet here for XEMA, what it will do is it will bring up a little pop-up box. So email : and then I can put in the name. Maybe I could modify this text expander snippet to, or have separate text expander snippets for people's names in agendas. So you've just given me an idea there. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, that's a great idea. You just gave me an idea as well. So.
Okay, excellent. That's it. Give with one, take with the other. That's
yeah,
good.
Exactly. Okay. Comment about your upcoming video guide, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing that as well.
Yeah, to see. I've deliberately shown that now because it means I have to do it, if that makes sense, because I've just demoed it. It's now got to happen, otherwise I'll be a failure. So it's yeah, good momentum.
Question about what's the difference between stalled and gathering dust?
Okay, so yeah, stalled basically means that I've got a project active in OmniFocus, but I don't have a next action that's actually defined for it. So the project isn't moving forward. It literally has just stalled. Whereas what gathering dust does is it will list all of your actions that you've got in, and it'll order them by the date that you actually added that task. So if I added a task a year ago and it's still sitting in OmniFocus, I've got to ask the question, look, is this relevant? Should this still be here, or is it just taking up brain space that could be better spent on something else? So yeah, that's the difference between those two.
And gathering dust, that applies to individual actions, not projects, or is it?
Yeah, it's individual actions, and it's only worker mode actions. It's not boss mode actions, because the boss mode is where all of my templates and my checklists are, and I could have created those a year ago, but they're still relevant because I'm still using them, if that makes sense. So it'd give me a false positive if I was to search the boss mode folder for those particular actions.
Yeah, one thing I love about Lee's setup is just as I mentioned earlier, the names they use for things, and it's a good reminder that we can give ourselves permission to use something other than admin if admin is not a very inspiring term. So when I think about doing my groove actions versus my admin actions, definitely the groove resonates more. And the whole concept between boss and worker mode, I think, is very relevant because there is a cost to switching between those two ways of thinking, and the more things can be encapsulated and kind of done in bulk in one mode before switching to the other, I think ultimately the more productive things will be. Question about, I'm curious about this too, about how day one works in terms of tracking goals. Is this something you've covered on your blog? And
no, and I'll tell you for why, because it hasn't quite met the sort of like the 3-month period that I sort of set myself for a workflow. If something's been in play for 3 months and I know that it works, then I will write about it. It's about 2 months now that I've been using this setup, and essentially, day one, you can have multiple journals for different areas. Well, I've got a home and family journal. I've got a journal for each client that I have, which tracks the work that I do. It's like a contracting log, but I've also just set up a goals journal. And I have different pages based on whether it's a quarterly goal, a monthly goal, an annual goal, etc. And all I do is I just have an OmniFocus task which just links to that particular journal, and it just prompts me to update weekly with the progress that I've made. So it's just like a course correcting mechanism. And it just works for me. The idea of day one being a goal tracking application just seems to work rather than DEVONthink, because DEVONthink, I don't know, it just doesn't suit that sort of purpose for me. OmniFocus, it doesn't suit that sort of purpose. I just visualize day one, journaling, goals. That's what it's all about. So that's why day one just works.
And that points to a great point, is that it's important to define what is the purpose of each of the apps you're using. So what is OmniFocus's purpose? And it might sound like a bit of a basic question, but I think it's worth unpacking it just to get more specific about this is what it is and this is what it isn't. So for Lee, for instance, that's a place where you park ideas. For me, those go into Trello. And there's nothing right or wrong about either approach, but we're just really clear where our ideas go so they don't fall in like 100 different places at once and potentially get missed. A number of questions about OmniFocus 3 and multiple tags and things, and unfortunately I'm not able to share anything that the Omni group haven't shared publicly, but I did spend some time there recently, and just really good to see what the team is up to, and it reminds me how thoughtful they are in terms of the design. They don't rush these things to market. They really give them the proper treatment and really think through, how are people going to use them and so forth. So there's a lot of really exciting things coming down the road. And in the meantime, there's certainly a lot to work with in the current version of OmniFocus.
Yeah, without a doubt. I would say that at the beginning of the year, I was looking at moving across to an application like Todoist or something like that, just so that I could have multiple tags. However, the fact that I couldn't have sequential projects, the fact that I couldn't have defer dates, the fact that I couldn't have a focus mode, very quickly turned me off of that. It'll be a valuable addition. I know how I'm going to use multiple contexts, but just need to wait, unfortunately. But OmniFocus, yeah, it's still the daddy for me.
Do you use the review feature regularly as well? Is that part of your kind of weekly review process? Or?
I'm very, very big on reviews, but I go through every single folder, meticulously and move projects from the ideas park into each folder. I tend to still review every single project every single week, but not from that review button. I just go down sort of like in a linear fashion from one folder to the next, and I just review every single project as I go down. So yeah, I don't actually use that button. I do use it as a guide just in case I've missed one. If I see that little brown bar come down on the left-hand side of the review button, it's like, oh, somehow I missed a project. Okay, yeah, I'll quickly go in and review it. But by and large, no. I'm so fussy about my weekly review and going through every single project line by line that no, I don't tend to use it.
So it's a bit of a safety net in a sense.
Exactly.
If you happen to miss something, yeah. Let's see. Any comments around relating Agile results and GTD in terms of those two methodologies, how they play into your system?
If I'm perfectly honest, I understand why I've been asked the Agile question that's in there, but by and large, Agile methodologies is not something that I've actually used very much in my project management lifestyle. It's always been sort of like the waterfall, stage by stage by stage, phase by phase sort of process. So Agile, no, it's not really something that I'm qualified to be able to comment on there. But as far as GTD goes, I do tend to follow the majority of the tenets of GTD. I do have a next action perspective. For example, if I just wanted a list of all of my next actions, I do have a first available sort of task perspective list. I do review incredibly regularly because it's the one meeting that I schedule for myself every week that I never miss, because it's just that course correcting that I need to have. And I would not be a productivity ninja if I did not fully advocate the weekly review. It's just, it's just the most important thing that you can have. So yeah, my OmniFocus setup does pretty much follow GTD, almost to the letter, I think. Apart from, that context sort of shift that I seem to have taken and moved across to perspectives instead. But as I say, it works for me. It may not work for anyone else, but it certainly does for me at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. One not directly related to OmniFocus, but asking because you mentioned Mark II, if you write in Markdown, and what's your favorite text editor these days?
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, it's a good question. Yes, I do write in Markdown. I absolutely love it. I think it's a very, very quick, efficient way of working. And because I have a Setup subscription, I use Ulysses. Ulysses is fantastic. I can't think of very many applications that are better. I used to use Byword because I love the simple sort of interface and syncing with iCloud to my iPad if I was on the move and wanted to use it was great. But I don't know, Ulysses just seems to have a few more bells and whistles. So yeah, Ulysses.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. That's my tool of choice as well. And as Lee mentioned, it's available as part of the setup, or you can get a subscription with the company directly. Oh, there was one about, if you go back to the dashboard, just kind of where you have basically one action that reveals more detail, and if you have a focus action.
The focus action.
Yeah, if you could just walk through that one more time.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me just open up this project here. So just to backtrack as to the why I have a focus action, there will be a task or a series of tasks that I need to do on a regular basis. So for example, social media maintenance, I haven't shown anybody here yet, is a list of, what have we got there? It's about 8 separate tasks that I need to do, but I do not want those 8 tasks appearing on my dashboard, because otherwise when I get up in the morning and I go through my morning ritual, I'll look at the dashboard and I'll just see a whole load of tasks. That's not really what I want. I just want to know sort of like the overarching task that represents them all. So that's what the focus action essentially is. It's almost like as Kurosh says, it's like a meta task. So it's a task that points to a series of tasks. So yeah, that's essentially all the focus action is. I will click on the focus action, open it up in project view. Let me just go back actually and show you how I did that. There's two ways that I was able to do this. I can either bring up the context menu and click on showing projects, and you can see that it brings up the list of them here. Or I use an application called BetterTouchTool, which let me just bring that up here. And what BetterTouchTool does is it will take a trackpad gesture that you put in and it will map it to a keyboard shortcut. So the keyboard shortcut for open in context view or open in project view is Command Alt R. So with a 2-finger double tap, which is, let me just open up here, go back to my dashboard. All I'm doing here is I'm just going to double tap on the trackpad and you can see that it's automatically opened it up in that view there, which is really, really handy. If I want to go into focus mode for a particular folder, let's say solium.biz here, and I want to go into focus mode, if I do a 3-finger double tap, you can see that I've now gone into focus mode. But yeah, that's how I use BetterTouchTool to sort of like, sort of start moving around OmniFocus in a slightly quicker manner. Not that keyboard shortcuts aren't quick, but hey, if you can go quicker, go quicker.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I need to revisit BetterTouchTool. It's one that I've kind of tried to use in the past, but I'm so focused on keyboard shortcuts.
The key is not to overload it. Otherwise, you tend to forget what shortcuts are there, and the time you spend thinking about what your gesture is, you could have just done it.
There's another, just on a side note, there's a script that allows you to open in a new tab the project of the selected action. I'll be adding that to Learn OmniFocus soon, so that's one I find
that'd be good.
Is very useful, because then you don't lose your place. You've still got the dashboard open in one tab, and then the new one is basically just a temporary place where you can go through the actions specific to that project and close it down when you're done. So the rituals you mentioned early on, those are ones you just use for reference, is that correct? Or do you actually check them off?
Oh no, they're just there for reference. They're in muscle memory now. I know exactly what I'm going to do and when I'm going to do them, but the reason that I have them in my boss mode folder is I have a weekly task. You just check the rituals, review the ritual, as it were. Is there anything I need to add? Is there anything that isn't working?
Yeah, okay, got it. Whereas the checklists, you do check those off in the autocomplete. Yeah,
absolutely, and then they will reappear. Yeah,
and want to echo what a lot of people are writing in the chat box to thank so much, Lee, for everything you shared. That was definitely very valuable. Standing ovation. And definitely check out Lee's blog if you haven't already, and lots of great things there. And look for that day one post. And have you done a post on using BetterTouchTool with OmniFocus?
Yes, I have actually. I've done BetterTouchTool, and also we ran out of time, but I was going to show you how to use how to sort of like link to email messages in Airmail. So instead, I will just have to point you to my post on MyProductiveMac. Do a search for Airmail and OmniFocus, and you'll find it.
Okay,
and
good.
As a project manager, it's a very important sort of way of being able to track tasks that you've assigned to people, and track email messages that you've sent and people don't want to reply to. Okay,
definitely. Well, I think we might have to have you back maybe after OmniFocus 3 is out in the wild, and can see how you're using tags and some of the new features. Okay, well, thanks again, Lee, and thanks to everyone who joined here live, as well as all of you who are watching a recording of this. And I hope to see you at one of the upcoming live sessions, maybe at one of the Learn OmniFocus office hours sessions, or at the one in January. Okay, take care. Bye for now.
Excellent. Thanks, guys.